Hello, everybody. This is Outside the Matchbox, episode 3. And housekeeping, there you might see a big giant dog behind me. His name is Lala, and he may ask for my attention, and I'm going to try and ignore him. It's very difficult to ignore. Good morning. Today, there are a few updates and topics that I would like to just go over briefly. We haven't heard back from the 11th Circuit regarding the Special Master Review, but we have the Oath Keepers Seditious Conspiracy Trial opening arguments starting today. What we learned late last night, is that Stewart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers have moved again in court to move the case out of DC into Virginia. The judge in this case, Judge Mehta, has denied this change of venue motions over and over again. This time, they use some sort of how the argument is the same argument, that the jury is tainted and there's a bias, when there's no showing of that. The judge is likely to dismiss that and deny that motion, and opening arguments are set to begin today. There has been reporting that one of Stewart Rhodes' defenses will be that the Oath Keepers and Stewart Rhodes was waiting for Donald Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act and call up a militia, and that they had not done anything wrong by being there because they hadn't even gone into the Capitol and they were waiting for Donald's orders. And when Donald did not invoke the Insurrection Act, they left and they went to go eat. I believe they went to Olive Garden. Bad name for Olive Garden. Olive Garden has great breadsticks. Now, there are many places that argument would fail. The Second Amendment right to bear arms is for the security of the state. It is for our defense, and it is not for any old militia. It's for a well-regulated militia. What does regulated mean? Regulated means it is under the administration of the government in some way, shape, or form. And in our context today, a well-regulated militia is the National Guard. And if there was an insurrection that the President of the United States had to put down, they would call up the well-regulated militia of the National Guard. They wouldn't call up any militia that just decides they are now a well-regulated militia on their own assessment. So Donald Trump, even if he on January 6th had invoked the Insurrection Act, he would have had to call in the National Guard. He couldn't have legally invoked the Insurrection Act or the series of acts, measures that needed to be taken to mobilize a well-regulated militia. He wouldn't have done that by mobilizing the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and the Three Percenters. That still would have been an insurrection against the government of the United States, because the President of the United States is not the only aspect of the government of the United States. In fact, Congress is the Article 1 branch of government. So, and that is on January 6th, the sitting Article 2 executive attacked the Article 1 branch of government. And so even if he would have invoked the Insurrection Act, and even if he would have then called up a well-regulated militia, that well-regulated militia would not have been the Oath Keepers. It would have been the National Guard, which is what Vice President Pence had to do because Donald was sitting there for 187 minutes and did nothing, which brings into question Mike Pence and how he needs to testify and why he hasn't done so yet. It's just the privilege is astounding. So that's the reason why the Stewart Rhodes Insurrection Act argument doesn't work. Here's another reason why it doesn't work. Because the Stewart Rhodes has been indicted for many charges. The chief of those charges is seditious conspiracy. The statute, the law, the letter of the law of seditious conspiracy does not require that Stewart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers had to go inside the Capitol building in order for their seditious conspiracy crime to have been completed. The seditious conspiracy charge is a conspiracy charge. It goes to the specific intention of delaying, obstructing, insurrecting. It is not actually the act of that obstruction. It is not the act of that delay. It is not the act of the insurrection. It is the conspiracy of that act and the meeting of the minds of one or more persons in the commission of a conspiratorial act and commission of overt acts in furtherance of that conspiracy, such as communicating, such as planning, such as organizing between the various groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and Three Percenters and the other extremist groups who really had nothing else in common other than this insurrection, right? And it puts the whole insurrection idea on its head in the sense that Donald Trump would have invoked the Insurrection Act against Congress and the will of the American people, because that's the only way he could have invoked the Insurrection Act. Any other way of invoking, the proper way of invoking the Insurrection Act, the people who he would have invoked the act against were the Oath Keepers and the people who were attacking the Capitol, because they were attacking the government of the United States, and he's the chief of the enforcement branch of the government of the United States. So it doesn't matter that Stewart Rhodes had to go into the Capitol. He didn't have to. He just had to plan it. He had to coordinate between the other groups. He had to get that group there. So the very presence of Stewart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers at that rally and then at the Capitol, whether they went in or not, is more than enough to satisfy the elements of the crime of seditious conspiracy under 18 U.S.C. 2384. Now, so today we're going to hear the oral arguments, the opening arguments in Stewart Rhodes' trial. We will probably hear something to the effect of this Insurrection Act nonsense. I wanted to give y'all an idea that the Insurrection Act defense and the defense that they were waiting for Donald's orders, thereby in many ways blame shifting to Donald, is just it's not going to fly in court. It's not going to fly in the factual sense. It's not going to fly in a legal sense. There's no logic to it. But good luck to them. The second topic I want to talk about is the 2022 election from this election security standpoint. And as we learned from the fourth January 6th committee hearing, that Rudy Giuliani and Donald's other allies attacked Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss, and other election workers with countless types of dog whistles, racist dog whistles, corruption whistles, and made their life hell. What is horrifying, or as Margaret Brennan brilliantly put it in Face the Nation, what is terrifying is that these same agents of chaos and fear factors that were attacking election workers have now become part of the election campaign, election worker apparatus. So what that means is that there are election deniers who are now working in election offices, which makes the work of good faith election workers that much more difficult. And the reason why this is happening, Face the Nation, Christopher Krebs was interviewed, talked about the outside influences now bleeding in with the domestic disruptions caused by the MAGA movement and election denial movements going on local, state, and federal level. So as I warned many times before, that this will keep going. This will keep going until it is stopped, and it's come to fruition. There are outside actors working on a local level, like China disinformation campaigns, and there are outside actors like Russian disinformation campaigns that are working on disrupting elections from the grander standpoint, the messaging standpoint. So, and we will, you should look up the Alex Ionov indictment by the DOJ. That is one of the indictments that came out a couple of months ago. No, last month. Yeah, beginning of August, so a couple of months ago, right before the Mar-a-Lago search thing happened, or right around that time. That's why it was buried in the news. But it is about a very direct and overt Russian disinformation campaign that went in and recruited Americans who were aware of what they were doing as collaborating with Russian operatives to be able to support the MAGA movement. And so there are these outside bad actors, but they are being bolstered and supported unwittingly or knowingly by local domestic enemies. There's no other way of putting it by saying domestic enemies, because that's what they are. So we have to be very careful, and I believe that election workers are brave, the ones who have stuck around to continue to provide support for this vital function of our democracy. On to the next topic. Before I do that, I wanted to ask and request that all of you who watch this, if you like my content, please like and subscribe. I will keep on doing this as long as I can, and as long as it's needed. Getting your support that I have is important in the way that it gives me reason to continue to inform you. Because if I'm just speaking into a void, then I'm just getting my word across and my frustrations across, and I'm not really helping anybody else understand what's happening. And my purpose is to help whoever will listen understand what's happening with our country and our republic. And I've been dissuaded and broken down and torn down a lot. And, you know, that's because that's what happens when you put yourself out there. And I just have to keep on going. And I would have to hope that you will support me. So thank you for your support. And please like and subscribe and share if you like my content. The third topic I wanted to talk to you about is the the hurricane and the aftermath from the hurricane. You know, um, Margaret Brennan in Face the Nation talked to Senator Rick Scott, who talked about the devastating effects of Hurricane Ian on Florida and how it is unprecedented in so many ways that some of the worst storm surges that he saw when he was governor was about 9 feet in the Key West. And this time around, parts of mainland Florida had an 12 to 18 feet of storm surge. It's hard to imagine an 18-foot wall of water coming in your direction. There's literally nothing you can do. And when asked about funding and why he opposed climate change funding, his answer was that Democrats pile all the fundings in with large bills and we don't want to address large bills and spend too much money. Now, there comes a time in governance when tightening your purse in the face of the apocalypse is in any circumstance, would be in any circumstance considered an unreasonable and, for lack of a better term, stupid thing to do. But that's where the GOP is. They want piecemeal legislation on issues where they can agree 100%. That's not how legislation passing has worked in decades. It doesn't work when the GOP is majority. It doesn't work when the Dems are in majority. But that's what Mr. Scott wants. And when you have a Republican Party that, even at the face of an apocalyptic disaster, would say that they don't favor climate change legislation because they are packaged in with too many other things, is perhaps the weakest argument one can have. Speaking of weak arguments, we'll go to the last topic, subtopic: Donald Trump's sedition rallies. As I've said many times before, a Trump rally is a sedition rally. Every word out of his mouth at those rallies is a seditious big lie that fits in with the narrative that would bring down our republic. And at this particular sedition rally, Donald Trump attacked Mitch McConnell by saying he has a death wish, excuse me, and then called his wife Coco Chow. I don't know what Coco Chow means. I don't know what the racial undertone of Coco Chow is. It's just disrespectful, whether it is racist or not. It's probably racist because there's Chow in the back. I just don't know. And the fact that Donald Trump is racist, again, is not a matter in question anymore. And I don't want to talk about that anymore. What I want to talk about here is that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene said that the Dems are already killing people. The Dems are already attacking people, which is not true. So she's inciting Donald's shadow army along with Donald. I think she's vying for the VP slot in 2024 if Donald runs. And death wish for McConnell for not supporting Trump and MAGA. And Coco Chow. It is unnecessary. It is derogatory. It is condescending. It is racist. It is insane. It is completely in line with what Donald Trump is. And Rick Scott's response to that is Donald Trump has a lot of nicknames for everybody. He probably has a nickname for me as well. And Godman's like, what could that nickname be? I don't know. I'm not going to say it because then I might be violating some words. But here you see, we live in this world where public figures are being racist, being offensive. Not offensive, I won't say offensive. This isn't offensive. It's racist, it's seditious, it's subversive. It's not offensive. It's not the same as saying somebody should deserves the sentence they got, or somebody should get diarrhea for being evil, or somebody should arrest the traitors. It's not the same as saying the Dems are already killing or McConnell has a death wish. The reason why it's not the same is because we have seen in the past how Donald's words have incited people and incited the only insurrection from domestic enemies against the Congress of the United States by a sitting president. And Margaret Brennan pressed Rick Scott about these two issues, about calling Elaine Chao that racist name and for saying McConnell had a death wish, and about Marjorie Taylor Greene's lies about how the Dems are out killing people or whatever she's saying. And Rick Scott just spun that and didn't answer the question. And that is the reason why the establishment GOP has died. It's because of that weak, spineless enabling that happens. And Rick Scott's response was, you should look at the vice president's words. What words? The vice president said that the GOP was going out killing people? No, she didn't. And I'm glad that Margaret Brennan said that she was going to bring that up. So that she was going to track that and she's going to keep on reporting on that, because there are those two, what the vice president said about FEMA aid and what Marjorie Taylor Greene said about the Dems are killing people. Those two are not same. The same way as I said in my previous segment that a book about same-sex couples having kids and Kash Patel's children's books, those two types of books are not the same. One is talking about diversity that exists in society. The other one is entrenching a lie and inundating children. In this case, the vice president's words about FEMA aid and disparate administration of FEMA aid is not the same as Marjorie Taylor Greene lying and inciting her flock. Add to that her hog hunting campaign video with that gun, machine gun, is overtly violent, is insightful of the same people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th and who have continued to sow division all throughout the country. And it is about as dangerous as it can get. It's all going to come to a head on election day and around election day. And I implore everybody to be vigilant, to be careful, to avoid crowds, to not go to protest rallies where you think there will be MAGA people, to not give them something to bounce off of. You do your civic duty, you register to vote, you get your friends and relatives and people around you to go and vote. You go ahead and vote. You keep up with the news, no matter how restricted you may get by whatever means. If there is a will, there is a way. And keep your head down, keep up with the facts, stand up for your republic, keep your head down in the sense of don't be provocative. But telling the truth isn't provocation, mind you. So we have to have a very long and hard discussion about the freedom of speech and how speech has become a creature that has to be managed in a way so as to not infringe on our First Amendment rights, as well as not allow an attack on our republic under the guise of our First Amendment rights. Because insurrection, words of insurrection, fighting words are not, words of incitement are not constitutional and protected speech. They're criminal. And the idea that people and media companies can peddle lies that are subversive and seditious many times over is not freedom of speech if it incites and if it is a fighting, if they are fighting words, if they create an imminent possibility of imminent harm, which January 6th rally speech of Donald Trump did. And there are many statutes in the books that I hope the DOJ will use to go after Donald Trump. And we are still in the very beginning of that stage. So I will end today's episode here. Thank you. If you like what you saw or heard, please like, share, and subscribe.